Welcome to Everything Is For You podcast, where we go beyond healing and we explore the full spectrum of personal and professional growth. Our mission is to truly inspire and empower you with insightful conversations that deep dive into reinvention, discovering your true purpose, and learning to be more present in each moment. Each episode features deep and transformative discussions with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, creatives who share their wisdom, stories, and practical tools. Whether you've been navigating challenges or seeking a more fulfilling life, this podcast is designed to support you on your journey and remind you that everything is for you. In this episode of Everything Is For You, I sit down with a dear friend, Flavia, and she's a brilliant musical artist. Her vibrant sounds explore themes of love, equality, and connection. From her international upbringing to her thriving career in the music industry, Flavia shares her insight on living fully, healing through creativity, and the power of music in building bridges between people and cultures. This conversation deep dives into finding joy, manifesting success, and embracing life's most sublime moments. So I welcome my good friend, Flavia. Hi, sweetheart. How are you?
Thank you. Hi. So good to see you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad this worked out because I know how much you're always traveling and a worldwide, international traveler all the time. So it's nice to have you in Los Angeles, even though we're not in the same room, but we're in the same city.
Yeah, it's nice to be a little bit closer and good to be back in LA for a little while.
Yeah. So, I've known you, I think I was thinking about it. I think it's been like 10 years now. I think something like that. It seems like it might even be a little bit longer. I'm not sure. But in those 10 years, I've really watched you, um, blossom into this. You've always been an actress and a singer, and you've always been very driven. And I've really watched you make a really cool life for yourself and success too. It's really, you're like, I think once people kind of hear how you live your life, it's going to open up ideas for other people because it's inspiring. It's truly inspiring. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. So I know that, you grew up kind of in three different cultures, which was Ireland, Los Angeles a little, and then Italy. Do you want to like start kind of there? Because I think that has a really good basis of how you've shaped into who you are as a human. So why don't you just kind of give us some insight of how Flavia started?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I probably got the travel bug from my parents because I did move around a lot. And my dad is from California. My mama is from Italy and Uruguay. So I've always had this like multi-international background. And then somehow when I was 8, we ended up in Ireland. And that's actually where I mostly grew up, my most formative years. So I always say I'm Irish by character, Italian by blood. Um, and from there, then there was just, a lot of moving around, a lot of different schools, a lot of different countries, cultures, languages. I then moved to Italy to finish school before moving to LA to pursue the music and acting careers. And so I've just been all around. And it's just been so beautiful to have that as my foundation. Of course, as a kid, when you're being ripped from another school, you're like, kicking and screaming. But then looking back, it's actually been such a blessing. And I have this global community. And that's probably why I'm ended up living nomadically the last 4.5 years, because I really thrive on change, and I'm really comfortable with uprooting myself and exploring in different countries and cultures and just inserting myself into new situations. So that probably helped a lot in those senses.
Yeah, you've been. I remember we saw each other in Mexico in 2023, and you were saying that you had not actually had a home for a few years, and so that was also a year ago. So yeah, but you're going into 4 years with like at a permanent address, correct?
Yeah, it's now like 4.5 years that I've been like fully nomadic. I guess you could say living out of my suitcase, but I do have different friends' houses or places that I come back to where I can kind of rejig things, or I'm like, oh, it's winter now. Thank God I've got, a suitcase full of stuff at a friend's house. So I definitely swap things out, but it's been amazing to just be living by the seat of my pants, wherever I lay my hat. And I have places I go back to a lot and do a lot of music work or acting work, or if I'm on an acting job, then I'm in some random country or state in the US. And so I don't know how 4.5 years passed, because if you had asked me, 5 years ago, if that would be possible or something that I saw for myself, that it wasn't even a twinkle in my eye. And all of a sudden, almost 5 years later, I'm like, I just love this. I could keep going.
So what is it about this lifestyle that attracts you the most, and what inspires you about it? Because I have another question after I hear that part, because I'm
Yeah.
very interested. Yeah.
I guess what attracts me is, well, there's so many things. I mean, I get to be exposed to so many cultures. I get to make art in so many different places with so many different people from different cultures. I mean, even just on a foundational level, like the architecture of different cities. When I'm in Paris, I mean, the art that I'm surrounded by, the way of the lifestyle versus when I'm in Ireland versus when I'm in Italy versus when I'm in LA, they all bring such different flavors that really affect the kind of art I'm creating, the kind of stories I'm telling, the way that I'm living, which inevitably affects my art is me, and it is all one and the same. And so it all affects each other. And so I guess I just feel so inspired. I've been just following the threads. It's also really connected me more deeply to myself, to my intuition, to my heart, because I'm following these threads that feel really right. And things then just keep coming up. I feel like when you're following these threads in front of you, all of a sudden I'll get a call, or I'll get a job, or someone will say, hey, do you want to come work on this music project in Paris? Or do you want to come to this dance intensive in Rotterdam? And I'm like, yes, I want to do all this. And it then influences my art. And so I'm just kind of following also what feels really alive for me in the moment, which is deeply connecting me to myself, and is allowing me to be this. There's challenges where all of a sudden I'm like, I have no stability. Like, where am I going in 2 weeks? And then learning to surrender and to trust, and learning to co-create with life as well. It's all been a big, beautiful part of the journey.
Yeah, well, that's one of the questions I was going to say, is like, what are some of the challenges with that? Because, I know when you go on a trip, let's say, let's say you're gone for a month and a half, or even 3 weeks or whatever. When you get home, there's that really nice thing about, oh, I'm home, and you get
Yeah,
into your
yeah.
your things. So like, how does that feel? Not having what you would call a home with all of your things in it. And what are there more challenges besides just that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is just grounding, and feeling that sense of security and stability with routine. And so what's challenging about that, and what's also beautiful, is I'm constantly having to find home within myself, and to realize that, like, I'm always home, because my body,
Hmm.
this is my temple. I'm with me for the rest of my life. So I'm actually always home. And
Right.
the shell around me can create a lot of stability and comfort and security and safety, but I can find that within myself. And through my practices, I mean, I always, the first thing I do when I'm anywhere, even if I'm somewhere for 3 days, is I set up my little altar space, my place where I can always come and like slow down and tune it, go inwards. I do have my like beautiful little things that I travel with, my little sacred objects, and my sheepskin rug that I come and sit on. And those are important to me, because it's important to have just some semblance of sameness when I'm always in these differing situations. And just really honoring my practices and my own routines, my beautiful connection with herbs and with medicines and with plants. I'm also a herbalist, and I'm cacao mama, and just knowing that, like, even when I'm always in these different places, I always have my herbs with me. I always have my heart with me. I can always tune
Hmm.
into me. I can always, find comfort in any situation. So the hardest times are if I'm going through kind of a more emotional dip, kind of a challenging period. that gets a little bit harder not to have my own nest, just because when your heart is hurting and you're, already don't have that added layer of safety and security, it's challenging, but it always sends me back home to me. It always,
Yeah.
the revelation is always just, well, I've got me. So we're home.
That's beautiful. I guess that's kind of you're learning or you're learning and consistently moving forward with knowing how to not attach so much to things, to places, to and even people. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean that like you understand how to detach because you feel at home. And I think that a lot of us miss that. I think that a lot of us haven't yet found that in ourselves. I think the people that are on the conscious path of learning and growing and and consistently evolving, I think that's a goal of theirs to feel that no matter where they are home within themselves. And I think that that's a consistent challenge with a lot of us. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. And you're so and it's so cool that you've tapped into this at such a young age. It's so
Oh,
impressive,
thank you.
because I think about like my generation compared to your generation. And I think I'm just so in awe of of your generation and the generation behind you, because you guys are tapping into such important things way quicker than we did,
Hmm.
and I love that. And that's very exciting for me. So that's
Well,
awesome.
thank you.
I mean, one of
Yeah.
the things I definitely have challenges with is attachment. It's something that I consistently struggle with. And I'm learning, and I work really, I'm growing through understanding why, like, what is my lessons in these, and why am I so attached, and what does that mean, and what emotions, and you know, there's
Are
a
you a
lot of
Pisces moon?
I'm actually a Cancer moon.
Well, there you go. You're a water baby.
Emotional, yes.
Well, to me, attachment is, I mean, the attachment piece is really interesting with the way that I'm living, because I am not naturally very good at letting go. In fact, I am a Pisces moon, and Pisces is the ocean. There's no borders, there's no boundaries, there's no the ocean is kind of endless. And so this piece of pulling all these parts of me back home is really something I'm working on, because I can feel that it's very hard for me to let go of things. And my nomading really teaches me,
Mhm.
all of a sudden I've got a suitcase in 7 countries, and I don't even know what's in any of them. And it's showing me like I don't miss any of that. None of it
Right.
really matters. I have everything I need with me.
You actually
Um
have clothes in my house from Mexico.
I know, I'm sorry. I don't see. I don't even know what's with you, but clearly I should come by and see you, and then
Yes, and I
Uh,
would love to see you as well. But yeah, yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. That's beautiful that you have that, and you're realizing that. And I do think, I mean, because we're both Aries as well. So, I also understand the attachment part. And but it's the love in us that loves so deeply and
yeah.
so forth. But um yeah,
Just one
that's
more thing on the attachment piece that I feel like has been so life-changing for me is living nomadically, where I can only carry a limited amount of stuff with me, has really helped shift the way that I live to align more with my values. I don't do any fast fashion. I buy everything secondhand. There are a few exceptions to that, but um, and we live in a society that is so obsessed with consumerism, which I personally believe is just how we fill the void, because so many of us are not taking that time to look inwards, cultivate our garden internally. And so, I know how it feels. I have a sad day and I'm like, I just want to go buy stuff, and it feels great. And it's like a dopamine hit. And so what's been so beautiful is it's really helped me appreciate everything I have with me, everything I own, and help me to not fall into this pit of consumerism and filling the void, and just like buying the new handbag and the new this and the that. And and actually just like really love everything. I really want to think about if I'm buying something, because can I carry it with me? Is this going to be really, useful for me in the months ahead wherever I'm traveling to? So I just really
Yeah.
appreciate how much it's made me more minimal. And I'm a maximalist. So, for me, my version of minimalism is still like I've got a giant altar bag of all my rocks and
Right.
shells that everyone else would think is trash. And I'm like, these are sacred.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that's
Well,
been really beautiful.
that's funny because, even connecting that to back to myself, I think that I I'm somebody that, of course, I'm similar to you, where if I'm going somewhere, I think I'm taking minimal, but I'm taking way too much always. And
I
I'm
saw your
trying.
suitcase in Mexico.
Well, we were going to a wedding, okay? But no, I am definitely working on that. It's something that I really like think about why I'm packing, like, and I'm getting better at it. But also, when it comes to buying things, I've never been. I love that you brought that up, because I think it's really important that we are conscious of that and thoughtful of that. And I would rather spend money on experience, to be honest. Like I would way rather spend money on a beautiful dinner with friends than a bag, and
Yeah.
traveling, and adventures and all of those kind of things, because that, like, the things, I like having things that are meaningful, but I don't, the excess is, and
Well,
I'm
one of
guilty
the
of it.
things that's like so important to me is to be the change you want to see. Like, I really want to live and embody my values fully. So if I want to see, I am like, such a naturalist and lover of nature. I mean, I think we all are. We're animals where the earth is our home. But I think we maybe have forgotten that, some of us, and
Mhm.
myself included, until more recent years. And if I want to see a more beautiful, cleaner earth, then I want to see more peace on earth, and I want to see, like, I don't want to then support things that are directly working against that. So it's really important to me in so many ways. And it's not convenient, it's not convenient to have
Right.
separate bins for recycling and da 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 da. But that's important. That's important to me, to, little things like compost and put the food in the garden, and, even fast fashion being one that we just talked about. It's
Yeah.
so fun for me to take time to go to thrift stores and to find these treasures. Not everything, it takes me sometimes a couple months if I need a new sweater to find it. And then you're putting that out into the world. And every single one of my friends gives me all of their secondhand clothes. And they all buy
Yeah.
so many of them buy fast fashion.
Yeah.
So I'm still getting all the latest this and that. But it's like, because I'm living by my values, I'm actually just getting all these things coming to me instead of me going to them or finding them in really special ways. And it just, yeah, it lights me up for me to live in a way that I can honestly say, like, aligns with the world I want to see, makes me feel really good.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really, that's beautiful. How is it with, like, relationships, with, traveling so much, and how have you kind of figured out that? Are you kind of in the way of your life right now of just, like, really focused on you, or are you having relationships, and how do they work with all the distance?
Yeah, that's been interesting, and that's partly been, I'd say, what's kept me nomadic, even longer. I got out of a relationship about 6 months ago, but my last partner lived in Ireland, which is where I grew up, as I mentioned, and so I'd kind of use that as my pivot point. So I'd leave for, say, a month or 5 weeks or 6 weeks, and then I'd come back and I'd see my partner and spend 3, 4, 5 weeks there. And what was so beautiful about that is I haven't spent that much time in Ireland, in over a decade. So all of a sudden I'm like connecting to the land and to community there in a way that I never had before. And my partner before that lived in Berlin, and I was working on a ton of music in Berlin, and all of a sudden, on and off, was living in Berlin for 8 months. So created an amazing community there, worked with a ton of artists. So on one hand, it's incredible for the way that I'm living, because it means I'm getting to make a home, in a sense, really getting to know a city, a country, a place in a way that I wouldn't if I didn't have some kind of root there. A partner, in a way, is some kind of really big root. And on the other hand, there's definitely challenges because you're either having to always fly to see someone or not seeing them, or they're coming to see you somewhere, and that can be really fun for them, and it can also be challenging. So it's with like everything, there are such beautiful and challenging aspects, but I really love how much challenges make us grow. You know, like I
Yeah.
don't really shy away from the challenging aspects of life because I have noted within myself, it is in the hardest periods, it is in the lowest periods that I go through that birthing, contracting cocoon phase that then afterwards I'm like the next level of butterfly than I had been before, you know? So if
Yeah.
we think of even how humans are birthed, you have to go through this extremely dark, extremely constrictive tunnel to then come into the light and to be birthed into the world. And that's how art's made. That's how the next version iterations of ourselves come into being. So I try to remember that when I'm in a challenging period, which tends to last for several months. You get into these spirals
Yeah.
and these state of minds. And I try to just remember, like, I'm going to come through this and I'm going to be even more epic when I do, you know?
Yeah.
So enjoy it. Enjoy that period while you can, because it's not going to last forever, and try to look at the lessons while you're in it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a couple months is great. For me, it's been a couple years, but and I'm still in it. But I think, it's interesting because I was thinking about this just the other day, or even maybe this morning. You know, I was thinking about how, because through my divorce and going, like, I've been doing a lot of massive change and healing. And I was looking back at who I was in the marriage and to who I am now. And it's, of course, there's so many pieces of me that are, just still there, but I am so different than I used to be in that marriage and my thinking. And even though I was always on a path to evolve, to grow, I was stagnant for a really long time. And I think that might be why these last 2 years have been so, like, just concentrated on change and movement. And I still think that I there's more cliffs I can jump off and leaps I can take with change. But I was thinking about that because, every, like you said, when you're in that cocoon and you grow and you change so much, I mean, it's incredible when I was thinking about it, how much we do so change, like, consistently, if we're being aware, and we're staying aware of that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I got chills when you were saying that because I've seen your journey as well, and it's been remarkable to see the shifts you've made in these last couple of years. You know, I mean, I've obviously knew you well before your divorce as well, but it's been so beautiful to see all that you've tapped into within yourself. And what I'm also amazed at by you, and I think we share this like relentless sense of joy and optimism, in life, is just you're just always that light. You're just paving that path forward. And I so admire that about you. And I think it's why we connect so deeply, is because we just share this Aries fire, of just
Yeah.
like forge ahead, begin anew. And I think we forget how much, like, you can't get expansion without contraction. And
Hmm.
our society is so obsessed with this like positivity culture, and I think the more we can learn to befriend our shadows and these periods of darkness, like, this is why one of the things I loved about moving, most of my nomading I've spent more back in Europe, and I have winters again. I was in LA for
Hmm.
10 years before that. And all of a sudden, I'm really living within the cycles again. It's incredible to see how important and valuable winter is to me. In LA, it's sunny every day, all day. It's just sunny and happy. And you're doing the same amount of work. Everything's output productivity because there's just always this sun, this solar energy. And in winter in Europe, it's a time to go into the cave, to gestate, to reevaluate who we want to be, how we want to emerge in spring, to go into the dark night of the soul, to make these shifts that then once I come out in spring, I've all these ideas, I've made all these changes, and it's so powerful to not just keep doing summer all year
Wow.
long, so
What a beautiful analogy. Like, what a beautiful thought process That is, and it makes so much sense. It's like you slow down and you kind
That's
of
why
like
I was so
bear.
burnt out all the time. I'm just like December, January, February. I'm just like, it's the same as any other season. And I'm just like doing the same kinds of things. Like
Yeah, I
cyclical living
feel
to
that.
me is like really powerful.
Wow, that is such I really appreciate that. That is really cool because you're right. We just are constantly pushing and moving, you know what I mean? And we're not slowing down, and we need to hibernate sometimes.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, especially as artists, and I think everyone in the world is creative. That's like a human
Yeah.
need, it's a
Yep.
human right. So when I say artists, I don't mean just limited to people that are doing that as a profession. As a
Yeah.
human being, we're all creating our own lives, you know? So we need these periods of darkness to tune into like what's working, what's not, how
Hmm.
do I want to go forth into the world, what is me, like even just in relationships, you know, or a
Yeah.
relationship with ourselves or outwardly, like it's important to have these periods of learning and diving in. And winter really does that for me, and it's not easy. It's definitely, if I look back at my
Right.
last winters, they've been emotional and they've been challenging and they've been invaluable. It's just, you
Right.
know.
Well, that's what something's being birthed in them, and that's beautiful. Like you said, coming out into spring, and you're like, roar, you're like, roaring. Which then gets me back. Like, I want to move into your music because ever since I've known you, you've been a musician, you've been an actress, and you not only are an artist in these particular categories of things, but you as a musician, you really like to address important issues like equality. You talk about connection, love, healing. So can we get into what that is for you and music, and why making sure that important messages are being sent through your music?
Yeah, I call it pop with purpose. You
Pop
know,
with
I just
purpose.
I
That's cool.
just I just I'm lucky to have a platform and music that's going out into the world where thankfully people are listening, and I want to talk about things that I believe can be a positive change in the world. You know, I think that the world needs a lot of love right now, and a
Mm.
lot of things need to shift. And music, if I look back in time, is one of the most powerful, revolutionary, you know, tools, gifts. If we think of, even the 60s and 70s of how much change people were making through their music,
Yeah.
it's incredible. To me, music is one of the only things we have in the world where people of every color, size, race, religion, belief, anything can come
Hmm.
together in a room and be transformed, feel, cry, dance, laugh. Like it is, to me, one of the greatest gifts we have, on this earth. Is,
Yeah.
I'm biased, but like, tell me one person that doesn't like music in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
just never heard of it. There's
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I know you've been touring a lot, and I recently I always stay in on your Instagram and all of that, and I'm going to make sure that all the audience knows where to find you. But
Hmm.
when I see you perform on stage, and you're performing a lot, which I want you to talk about, but it seems like you're consistently making yourself a part of the audience, and I see that a lot where, because you go to different venues in different countries and so forth, but it seems like you're kind of always dipping in to be like surrounded by your audience and connecting with them while you're singing,
Hmm.
and that's really beautiful. Yeah, I mean, can you talk a little bit about how what that is for you? Is
Yeah,
that
I
a
really
healing?
love that. I have one of my songs that I just released an EP called Wide Awake, which is about living life as wide awake as possible, seeking joy and aliveness in every day. And the title track of that album is actually, it's so special to me. A friend of mine shared with me the most interesting, beautiful, just life-changing perspective on death that I had ever heard.
Hmm.
And they shared that as much as, it was devastating for them to lose their mother, they felt that in a weird way, it was the greatest gift they could have ever given, because all of a sudden, through this loss, as painful as that is, they were able to soak in and appreciate life in a way that their blinders were onto before. They could see flowers differently. They could just, every day was just so, it wasn't guaranteed. And so there was this preciousness to life. And I see that in the way, my friend lives their life, and I wrote this song for his mother after we'd had this like sunrise night out in Paris. And he shared with me these stories of the way that his mother, still shows up for him daily, in the ways in which she's his fighter on the other side. And I was so inspired by this notion that, like, again, it's that contraction and expansion. It is so painful to lose people we love, and it can lead to this immense amount of life-changing expansion, and change the way that we live our lives. And so for that song in particular, I get down into the audience because, I ask everyone to put their lights up, for the fallen angels, and it just feels so beautiful to all be, in it together. It's guaranteed. We're all going to lose people we love. We're all going to eventually, go ourselves. And so there's just something about that song that really touches people. And there's just a magic to it. The first night of my last tour, I wasn't going to say before I told people what the song was about. And I wasn't going to say, my friend's mom's name was Sarah, and I wasn't going to say anything. And all of a sudden, the intro of the song started, and this voice came in my head. It said, "Say it's for Sarah." And I said, "This one's for Sarah." And by the end of the show, there was this man, probably in his, 50s, like bawling, crying. And he was like, just said, "This is one of the most incredible moments I've ever experienced. My mom just died a few weeks ago, and her name was Sarah. And I just felt like she was with me." I just want to cry even thinking about it. So the amount of people I've had come up to me after shows, because it's such a joyful song. It's not this sad, lost song. It's a really hopeful, joyful song. And so people are getting to have this cathartic experience of like feeling the emotion and the pain, but with this sense of hope and openness and love. And so I'm just so grateful that like those songs get to come through me, and I get to support people with something as painful as the grief of a lost loved one, and maybe bring some sense of hope and connection that night that guy or other people that have talked to me and their parents maybe passed years ago, and they get to have this moment that night of like having their lost loved one, in their heart. Is just like so special to me.
That's beautiful. I mean, wow, that's really cool, because, I love that message came in right then, and it really hit that person. So, you know what that means. That was his mama coming through you.
Exactly. I didn't want to say it, but
yeah, no. Are you like, how do you do with your music and your acting? Are you a big manifester? Are you a goal see, like, do you put down goals? Like, how is your process of like continuing to get connections, doing these tours, selling records, getting acting jobs when you're traveling all over the world? Like, what's your process of that, being a nomad?
I feel like I got my heart broken so much from trying to do the manifesting goal setting thing, because I'm so ambitious and there's so much I want to achieve, and like I want to go so far with this, and that I'd always set these goals, and then they just wouldn't happen in this exact way that I had set. Maybe
They show up in different ways and different times. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of felt like, I don't want to feel the sense of disappointment if this one exact specific goal that I set didn't happen, because there's 100 other things that I did achieve, and I want to focus on, what I am receiving, not what I'm lacking. And so I guess I've shifted my model a little bit. Like I recently came out of like months and months of a period of just feeling a little bit like I'd lost a bit of the joy with my music stuff. The music industry is changing so much. There's such an emphasis on like social media and content creation and short form content and numbers and algorithms, and the algorithms working against you. And it's just been a real battle, because it's like, well, that's not where my joy lies. Like
Yeah.
I want to like my voice, my melodies, my words, these are the things that like I want to get out into the world. And it feels like the way that the model is working is actually preventing the world from even receiving that. And so there's been a bit of a battle with how to shift with the times while also living within my values. I don't want to spend hours of my day on social media looking at a screen. It's just not how I
Yeah.
want to live my life. So it's like trying to find that balance. And recently I just had a huge epiphany, which really just comes back to loving what you're doing. I'm like now with this whole album concept I'm working with, and a total shift in the visual aesthetics and the design and the brand around it. Like I have this newfound aliveness and inspiration where it doesn't really matter to me how many views I'm getting, how many listeners. I'm not focused on the numbers side because I'm
Hmm.
just so alive with what I'm doing. And this is the challenge of art, is that the challenge and the beauty of it is that it's a really hard path because you're getting, hundreds of no's and hundreds of rejections, and you have this vision for how you want it to be received, and then all of a sudden, it looks totally different. But at least right now, I'm being reminded of how much what really matters is that what I'm saying and doing is making me feel alive, because then I can actually put all of my heart and all of my energy into it, and people will feel that, versus when I'm just like, oh, I got to do this on socials, better put some sort of random
Totally.
content
And
out. Like, no one's going to care because I didn't care.
yeah, 100%. I'm so glad you brought this up because it's something I think, a lot of us struggle with, especially as artists. And I think that, one of the things I've really been seeking through my journey is what makes me happy now. What is it in what is it work wise? What is it art wise? What is it hobby wise? Walking, like, what is it that brings joy into my daily life? And I've really had to sit with it because, when you live, like we've talked about, in Los Angeles, and I work in an industry that is doing things that I no longer care about as much. You know what I mean? Of course, I'm so grateful for the work and the jobs as a producer, but it's the content that I've been making for years and years. Do I really care? Like, does my heart get all warm and fuzzy? No. So what would make my heart warm and fuzzy? So that's what I've really been focused on. And it's been moving and changing, and the needle has been shifting. And you're right, like getting the social media thing is is an interesting thing. But I guess if we just keep moving forward to what lights up our day and our life,
Yeah.
I think the rest will fall into place, like you're saying. And I'm really
Yeah.
glad you brought that up because I think so many of us stay stagnant too long in places because we think that that's where we have to be, because that's a paycheck, because that's what we do. We live, we go to work, and no, that we only have a certain amount of years on this earth, and hopefully there are many of them. But let's be happy like on a daily basis for the most part. And when we're not happy, what are we learning and growing from that?
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you brought that up because that's
Mm.
beautiful and important.
And
And
I think for me, part of it is like, I've been doing this for so long that you start to feel the sense of like, okay, well, quitting's not an option. I've invested,
yeah.
my whole life into this, which firstly, quitting's always an option. I want to like put that out there for someone who's put, maybe that's just part of an integral part of the journey, is that there's so many things we learned and grew from in whatever we put our time into. But I'll say for myself recently, I started to feel this sense that I was a hamster on a wheel, and that the wheel was running me, that the wheel was just moving and I was just trying to keep up. Just quick, get another release out, get another release out. And recently I had to, because I've been doing things the same way, because that's just all I've kind of known and been doing. And recently I had to just go, stop the wheel, I had to bedazzle the wheel in rhinestones and glitter, and I had to get off and take a little break and then get back on the wheel and set the pace myself, and start being in control of the wheel again, because I don't want to feel that I'm just a cog in the system, that I'm just like,
Mhm.
I'm just putting out content. I want to
Yeah.
make art, and I want it to have purpose, and I want it to affect people. And that takes time sometimes. And that
Yeah.
also, I recently just shifted the whole way that I've been doing things. And that I couldn't even see that. Luckily, I have amazing people in my community. I talked to my sister. She's an incredible strategist and, designer and artist and brand creator. And she helped me see, like, yeah, this isn't working because you're trying the same thing over and over again in a different way, but it's still the same way,
Yeah.
different aspects in the same way. And so all of a sudden I had to like almost come back to basics and start from the ground up of like, what do I want to say? What is my mission
Yeah.
statement? What does that look like? What are the visuals around that? And then create the music from there. So that's
Yeah.
kind of
And
why
that
I'm
takes
like,
time to also listen to yourself about what that is, like now you're aware of the change and the new progress of moving forward in a different way. But now that finding that your new purpose of what that feels like, that also takes
yeah.
some digesting and planting the seed and
Yeah, and I
watering it.
couldn't even see it in myself because when you're in the rat race and you've
Yeah.
got that tunnel vision on, all you can see is ahead. And actually sometimes it's like you have to widen your vision and slow down. You think, "Oh, I'm behind. I got to just keep going." It's like sometimes the only way to get ahead is actually to completely stop
Yeah.
and take a look at your surroundings so that then you can get ahead more efficiently and more wholeheartedly.
Yeah. That's great. That's wonderful. So what's going on with your music now? You're on tour and you're doing a short tour. What is this going on now?
Yeah, I'm opening for an artist named Jordy on tour. Doing the West Coast leg. Just did the first LA show, and that was amazing to do a nice like hometown show to kick off tour. Like I said, I just released my EP Wide Awake, so I'm playing a lot of that beautiful music live on the road, and just released a single this week called Open Heart Surgery, which is a super fun dance bop, your favorite dance banger of the winter. If I'm even allowed to say winter in LA, I feel like I feel like we don't have a right to use that word in LA.
Yeah. I mean, it does get to about 40, sometimes
Oh
38.
my.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I'm going to put like links below, which is like Spotify and Apple. You're on all of those, the
I'm
music
all
platforms,
over.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Um, I mean, this has been so fun. I actually, I wanted to start this a while ago, but you're my first guest that I'm doing this with now. I'm going to start with every guest at the end to ask them some questions. And I want you to just answer them quickly and like, no, don't think about it, just whatever first comes to your
Okay.
mind, okay? Okay. So, let's see. Uh What's one daily habit or ritual that keeps you grounded in the present moment?
Okay, so recently I'm really excited to talk about this. I'm doing a 40-day sadhana, which is basically like a mindfulness practice, but essentially a 40-day challenge, if you want to call it that, of Kundalini every morning. And it's all around boundaries, this theme of this wonderful woman, Sophie Arcana, who is made this offering. And my goal with this was to rewire a lot of my limiting beliefs and limiting habits. I kind of struggle to find consistent movement and exercise, especially living nomadically, because I kind of need to like be part of a community with exercise. I'm not good at just like at home getting up and I don't want to say I'm not good because this is what I'm trying to rewire. I
Hmm.
haven't been historically as effective.
Hmm. Is this
But
Kundalini yoga or breath work?
mostly like breath work and movement and that. I
Yeah.
hadn't really been exposed to much Kundalini before this, but the point of it more is there was a lot of things I wanted to rewire. I wanted the stability of getting up at like the same time every morning, which is challenging for me to
Hmm.
wake up really early, doing this
Hmm.
movement right away, proving to myself that I could have this discipline and these boundaries of showing up for myself and honoring my body because it's one of the first things that goes. You're like, "Oh, today I'm really busy. I don't have time." Well, let me just like put my mental health and
A hundred
well-being and
percent.
body health in the bin to do these emails,
Yeah.
so
No, 100%. It's always the first thing to go is that, and that it's so great. How many days have you been doing it now?
I'm on day 22 now. And here, this is what I'm discovering, because there are days where I really do not want to do it. And I'm honoring this commitment to doing every single day for 40 days. And I'm trying to do as many of the days on the live call early in the morning. And I'm starting to see the benefits, which are just incredible. All of a sudden, I'm learning. Before, it was like, if there's something I didn't want to do, I just kind of wouldn't do it. And now I'm learning that, like, doing things we don't want to do, sometimes if it's in honor of our body, of our mental health, of our well-being, it is so beautiful to feel the challenge of doing something that is hard. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
we can do hard things. And when I finish the practice on those days where it's the last thing I want to do, I'm just so proud of myself. I feel so accomplished. Everything else in the day feels easier. Like, I can't remember what book it was I just read, but it was like, do the hardest thing first in the day. So I'm waking up and
Mm-hmm.
right away going into a practice, and it's making me just feel so, yeah, just so successful already in my day. I'm like, wow, I just, did something that I
Yeah.
normally don't prioritize time for. So I'm really passionate about this right now. So yeah, I just kind of went off on
That's
my
beautiful.
morning
I love
practice,
that.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, daily habits are really important, and I love that that it's making you feel so good. That's great.
It's just helping me
Okay, so
rewire my connection to my body, to my sense of discipline, my sense of boundaries, and know that, like, sometimes showing up for myself doesn't always, sometimes there's delayed gratification, and it is actually so
yeah.
much bigger than the immediate gratification of, like, staying in bed and getting more sleep, or not,
Yeah.
not doing something. So yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, in one word, how would you describe the feeling of being on stage?
Alive.
Okay. All right. I love it. Um, what is a piece of advice that you could give about either personal or career?
Yeah, I guess, we sort of already talked about this, but just follow what is alive for you. Follow the
Hmm.
joy, follow your heart. Our mind really can create a lot of roadblocks.
Yeah.
And for me, art is a really tough path to pursue. And what keeps me going is just, as long as I'm living in my heart and I'm following and I'm creating art that makes me feel alive, then it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Hopefully everyone else likes it as well, or at least some people like it. But if I feel amazing doing what I'm doing, and the ways that I'm passing my days in my life, then, like, that's what really matters.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. And if you could collaborate with any artist, living or past, who would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. Um, okay, I'll do one pass. I was like a mega Prince fan. I mean, like,
Oh.
I would just love to know what music Prince would be making now, in
Hmm.
this sea of, like, commercial, kind of slightly generic electronic and pop music realm we're living in. I'm like, what would Prince be doing? So
Yeah.
that's definitely,
That's wonder. I love that because Prince is one of my favorite artists as well, and
yeah.
I mean, I think many, many people. Okay, last question. Give me a book that you highly recommend and why.
Oh my God. Thank God you asked me this question, because I was going to say it earlier in our conversation when we were talking about cyclical living. I just finished reading a book called Wild Power.
Wild Power.
Wild Power.
Hmm.
And it is totally life changing, whether or not you have a womb, whether or not you are a bleeding individual once a month. This book, if you are partnered with someone that bleeds, or whether you're someone that bleeds, this book is incredible. It's changed my life.
And I'll put a link down because I love that. I think that this is going to be really cool with different guests to see what. I'm a huge book reader or listener now, more than reading, and I devour several a month.
I
And well, I think this has been such a wonderful conversation, and I think that there's been a lot of like really positive pieces that hopefully people can resonate with. I'm going to remind all of our listeners that you can find Flavia's music on all the music stations like Spotify and Apple and all of that. And I will put links of your Instagram page and other things down below in the notes. And if you are just now listening to this podcast, please subscribe or leave a review. It helps us so very much. Just little things like that just help a lot with these little shows. So I really appreciate your time. And it's been wonderful seeing you. Thank you
You
for joining me
too.
today.
Thank you so much
And
for
you're going to have
having
to
me.
come over and get your stuff so I can
I
see you.
would love that. No, it's been such a joy to talk about this, and it just really means so much to me to have friends and people like you that that care and that want to help, shift the tides and want to have these kinds of conversations. And clearly I was so excited because I'm shouting down the microphone this whole conversation.
Well, it's
So
funny
yeah, thank
because when
you.
we were speaking about, what lights us up, this particular thing I'm really enjoying. Like I'm really enjoying speaking with people, and I'm really dedicated to kind of, just having conversations of consciousness and mindfulness and thoughtfulness and growth and just getting out of our heads and staying stagnant. I'm really excited to have these conversations because I think that the more people that can, something resonates and something hits, then wonderful.
Yeah,
That's
and
it,
these
even
are
if
the
it's one
kinds
person.
of
So
the kind of
yeah.
beautiful content I want to be seeing more of in the world. I
Yeah.
love what you've been talking about on your show. So thank you so much. I was just lit up when you asked me to join you today.
Yeah,
So
I was
thank you.
excited. So, all right. Well, I love you, and I hope to see you very soon. And
Love
thank
you.
you for
Thank
coming.
you. Ciao,
Okay.
ciao.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.